Freedom looks beautiful until people start depending on you. Because the moment others place their trust in you, your choices stop being just yours. They carry weight, consequences, responsibility. And no character lives at the intersection of those two forces, pure freedom and unavoidable responsibility, more than Monkey D. Luffy. Luffy doesn't chase power for control. He doesn't seek authority, status, or recognition. His dream is simple, almost childlike, to be the Pirate King. But not for domination, for freedom, to live without limits, to go wherever he wants, do whatever he wants, and experience the world on his own terms. That's the essence of who he is, unfiltered, instinctive, and completely aligned with his desire for adventure. But here's the truth most people overlook. Luffy's freedom was never meant to stay simple. Because the moment he started building bonds, everything changed. When Luffy first set out to sea, his journey was about exploration, curiosity, the thrill of the unknown. But as he met people, as he formed his crew, as he built relationships that went deeper than just companionship, his world expanded. And with that expansion came something he never asked for, but fully accepted: responsibility. Luffy never sat down and decided, "I will carry the weight of others." It happened naturally, through connection, through loyalty, through the way he values people. And that's what makes his character so powerful. He doesn't see responsibility as a burden. He sees it as part of who he is. But that doesn't mean it's easy. Because there's a constant tension within him, the desire to remain free, to follow his instincts without hesitation, and the reality that his actions affect the people he cares about. Every decision he makes now has consequences, not just for himself, but for his crew. And yet he never loses that core part of himself. That's the balance. Luffy doesn't abandon his sense of adventure to become responsible. He integrates responsibility into his freedom. He remains the same person, carefree, spontaneous, fearless. But when it matters, he steps into a role that requires clarity, strength, and unwavering commitment. Look at how he leads. He doesn't command through authority like a traditional captain. He doesn't strategize every move or control every outcome. Instead, he creates an environment where each member of his crew can be themselves, where they can grow, fight, and contribute in their own way. That's a different kind of leadership, one rooted in trust. And trust is powerful. Because when people feel trusted, they rise. They become more than they thought they could be. And Luffy understands that instinctively. He doesn't need to micromanage. He doesn't need to dominate. He believes in his crew, and that belief becomes the foundation of their strength. But belief alone isn't enough. There are moments when Luffy is forced to confront the reality of his responsibility. Moments where his decisions have consequences that go beyond adventure. Where the stakes are no longer just about exploration, but about survival, sacrifice, and protection. And in those moments, you see a shift. Not a complete change, but a deeper layer of who he is. The playful, carefree Luffy becomes focused, serious, intentional. Because he understands that freedom doesn't mean ignoring consequences. It means being willing to face them. That's a level of maturity that often goes unnoticed. Because most people associate responsibility with restriction, with limitation, with losing a part of yourself. But Luffy shows the opposite. Responsibility doesn't take away his freedom, it gives it meaning. Because what is freedom if there's nothing worth protecting? What is adventure if there's no one to share it with? That's the deeper philosophy behind his journey. Luffy isn't just chasing freedom, he's building something along the way. Relationships, loyalty, a crew that would risk everything for each other. And that transforms his journey from a personal adventure into something bigger, something that matters. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Luffy never lets responsibility turn him into someone he's not. He doesn't become overly serious. He doesn't lose his sense of joy. He doesn't start calculating every move out of fear of failure. He stays true to himself, and that's important. Because one of the biggest mistakes people make when they gain responsibility is losing their identity. They become rigid, controlled, disconnected from the very things that made them who they are. Luffy avoids that. He evolves without losing himself. And that's rare, because it requires a deep level of self-awareness, an understanding that growth doesn't mean becoming someone else. It means becoming more of who you already are. Luffy's journey also teaches something important about pressure. As his influence grows, so does the expectation placed on him. People start to rely on him, believe in him, look to him as a symbol of something greater. And that kind of pressure can break a person. It can create fear, hesitation, self-doubt. But Luffy doesn't internalize it that way. He doesn't carry expectations as weight. He carries them as purpose. And that shift in perspective changes everything. Because when responsibility feels like a burden, it slows you down. It creates resistance. But when it feels like purpose, it fuels you. It gives direction to your actions. And that's exactly how Luffy operates. He doesn't fight because he has to. He fights because he chooses to. Because protecting his crew, standing up for his values, and continuing his journey all align with who he is at his core. There's no conflict between his freedom and his responsibility. They exist together. And that's the lesson. You don't have to choose between living freely and being responsible. You don't have to sacrifice one to have the other. The real challenge is learning how to balance both, to move through life with a sense of adventure, curiosity, and authenticity, while still showing up for the people and responsibilities that matter. Luffy shows that it's possible, that you can laugh, explore, and enjoy life while still being someone others can rely on. That you can chase your dreams and still protect what you've built. That you can be free without being careless. And that balance is what makes him one of the most powerful characters in One Piece. Because at the end of the day, Luffy isn't just trying to become the Pirate King. He's proving something much deeper. That true freedom isn't about escaping responsibility, it's about choosing it.